Did you hear that hating your first drafts is so over and we're now in a new phase of loving our writing at every stage, no matter if it's perfect or not? Welcome to this video where I expose my first drafts, aka where I lovingly talk about my first drafts, because first drafts are not a ground to just shit on. You don't have to do that. I mean, unless you want to shit all over them, you can do that too. But you don't have to feel like you have to hate your first drafts just because, people on the writing internet say you have to. If you didn't see the first video like this that I posted in February, check it out. But I'm all about developing your own love for your writing. So hopefully this video encourages you to also love your first draft. All right, so we're looking at Excerpt 1, which of course, like I said, is from Sunless Ground, which is a contemporary fantasy novel. I picked an array of excerpts as well as sort of the different points of view that the book is told in. It alternates between two characters and tried to pick ones that would kind of show you different kind of parts of my writing style. So this is an excerpt where the main character Harrison is sort of being held against his will. And he ends up meeting this new guy shortly after breaking up with his boyfriend named Callahan, who may or may not be his new evil boyfriend. So anyways, this is Callahan and Harrison sort of interacting, and low-key Callahan may or may not be manipulating him. All right, anyways, let's jump into it. Callahan visits him so often he begins to lose count. He uses both these visits and the rapidity of his body's healing to count the days, assuming each new wave of strength to count as a day, if not two. According to these calculations, he spends an additional week in the concrete room, give or take. On day 3, Callahan did indeed bring him the art supplies he'd promised, several sheets of letter-sized manila paper and a mixed set of charcoal sticks and Conte. "If you need anything else, let me know," he'd said before he left, which was a half-true invitation because what Harrison needed was a scalpel or a knife or even a pencil he could use to stab that archangel-looking man to death. He calmed his proclivity for homicide with the pack of cigarettes he'd won in their first chess game and by sketching out portraits, and ran out of paper so quickly Callahan brought him an entire notebook's worth the next time he visited, touting also some lunch. Chicken soup, which under normal circumstances Harrison hates, but in his desperation, he ate with voracious glory. It's then that Callahan noticed the portraits, which Harrison usually kept face down on the ground, and before he could stop him, Cal had lifted the drawing to the light. Ooh, okay. I love this excerpt. So much happens. Okay, Rachel, moving through time like a pro. One of the things that I'm so envious, like when writers can do, is like moving through time, like within like sentences, within paragraphs, when you can skip moments in time. I'd always feel so professional to me. And I mean, I've been writing for so long, and I don't feel like I've really like mastered that. So I like that I did that here, sort of. Where's the 3 hours later bit? I don't even know if I can find it to highlight it. There was on day 3, not 3 hours later. On day 3, Callahan did indeed bring him the art supplies he promised. So we moved, Callahan visits him so often he begins to lose count. He uses both these visits and the rapidity of his body's healing to count the days, which I think is kind of an interesting sentence. Like, we're not talking about revisions. And of course, in future videos, I can show you how I'd revise this. So I don't want to focus so much on it. But something that I noticed is it would have been so easy for me to see a sentence like this and paused at it and pecked at it and pecked at it and pecked at it for hours instead of, writing the rest of what you can see here. I could have, in the past, I definitely would have stuck to this one sentence, clung to it, and kept revising it and revising it. And I'm saying that now because, I mean, the way it's phrased is a little bit cumbersome, right? It could be a little bit more concise. I think I understand what I mean. Like, he is basically tracking how time passes by how his body heals because he has, like, magical healing powers that are, like, very vague and I don't even know how they work. But anyways, I could have really hyper-focused on that and spent more time worrying about how that sentence read than sort of productively moving forward with the rest of the scene. As you can see, I would not have the rest of the page if I had just stuck on that one sentence. So I just think that's a good one to point out because there are a couple moments here. There's even a moment where you need some commas. I think it's in the second paragraph somewhere here. And by sketching out portraits and ran out of paper so quickly, Callahan brought him an entire notebook where the next time he visited, touting also. So this is a really long sentence, right? Which in most cases, like when I use it stylistically works. I just don't think I actually meant anything stylistically with that long sentence. So this is not me trying to critique the excerpt, because that's not what the point of this video is. It's just to show you there are times when I'm writing when I realize that something could be fixed. It could be critiqued. And I sort of resist that urge, and I just keep going, because I know that in my process, it's okay to accept that there might be a bit of a long sentence, or I might have to go make something sound less awkward. So yeah, I love, I mean, the specific details, I mentioned this in the last video, experience in writing over time. What it's helped me with is sort of coming up with specific details on the spot, like the charcoal sticks and the Conte. It also helps that I am an artist. And so I remember when I was in high school, you know, having to use Conte. So if you don't know what Conte is, you'd probably be like, what? But yeah, the manila paper, these are all details that formed in my mind as I went. So that's also to say that if you're not in year 10 of your writing, you can't like expect your draft to look like mine. And period, like you never should expect your first draft to look like mine, even if you've written longer than me, if you've written less time than me, because we're not the same writer. So, you know, your first draft might look quote unquote better than mine. We're all in our own journeys. This is what mine looks like. The dialogue here is kind of like basic, but then he kind of addresses the sort of in the sense, like a half-true invitation. Like, you know, he can tell that Harrison's like, like you're not actually being sincere. Half true, I would probably change was an insincere invitation. Because what Harrison needed was a scalpel or a knife or even a pencil to stab that archangel-looking man to death, which this is very funny. This is very Harrison in Seventh Virtue voice. He's so goofy. He always sounds like this. But like he calmed his proclivity for homicide. He sounds like this the whole time in this particular voice. If you are familiar with my other work, in like you can read him in literary, he doesn't always sound like this. So I think it just goes to show it's very accurate to sort of the book that he's in. Also, it's very funny that he finds it important to insert that he hates chicken soup. I don't think he means just chicken soup. I think I meant to write chicken noodle soup, because I also don't really like chicken noodle soup. I do anyway. This is not about me. This is not about me and the chicken noodle soup. But I thought that was such a funny. That's a funny detail for him to like, while he's like hungry and being held against his will, he's like, I hate chicken soup, but like I'll eat it, fine. And I love that this paragraph ends on Cal had lifted the drawing to the light. What a pretty image. So that's the first excerpt. Let's move on to the next one. We're going right into it. I'm just gonna space down here so it's all on one page. I have no idea what this excerpt's about. So this is in Reeve's point of view, and Reeve is the other narrator in Sunless Ground. This one is a recent chapter I wrote in April, where Reeve ends up going to, also against her will. She's not like being like, you know, it's not like antagonist against her will, but like she's being stubborn, so she doesn't want to be in this new place. She and her friends have taken a trip to Oklahoma because it's safer for her than where they were in New York. So she's talking to a mystical bird named Humilitas. If you don't know anything about Seventh Virtue, go watch the video because it's not going to make sense. Who's also her brother. So I'm not going to say anything else because I don't feel like I can. But yes, it does explain it in the excerpt. It's almost ironic how Reeve doesn't mind spending time with her brother so long as it's the bird version of him. Perched over Humilitas, she combs the bird's iridescent feathers with her fingernails, smiling as he burrows his head into her hands. She understands the creature in front of her is just as much Lonan is as much him. But still, as she rakes her hands through his soft feathers, she knows the bird wouldn't betray her quite like her brother did. You wouldn't leave me for dead in New York, would you? She asks the bird, not a genuine question, of course, really. She's referring to what she inadvertently did to Harrison, or was forced to do to Harrison, swapping the metallic bustling of New York for the silence of Oklahoma. Humilitas doesn't react except to blink, his eyes impossible to get used to, even though she's primarily taken care of him in the 2 weeks they've been here. She can't fault herself for her startle. She sees her brother's face, literally, in this animal. She pats the bird's forehead, then withdraws her hand. Of course you wouldn't. Oh, this is such a funny excerpt. I think it's also humorous despite, you know, the circumstances before this chapter where like she was very upset. So to start with this one in humor, it's quite nice of a shift. I like it because her dialogue is quite charged. You wouldn't leave me for dead in New York, would you? That she's asking a bird that obviously can't speak English. Humilitas can understand her. You can understand English. You just can't speak English. the bird. So, I mean, technically he could probably answer her in some other way. But anyways, I think that's such a loaded thing to ask because that's what she feels she's been, forced to do by her. What is Darren to her at that point? Is Darren her fiance at that point? Yeah, by her fiance, by her brother, by Foster, her friend, like by Darren's sister. Like she feels like she's against her will had to like betray her best friend, and she just hates that. Her best friend's Harrison, who is, in distress in the previous excerpt. Anyways, so yeah, I love this one. I think it's funny. And also the first sentence is funny too. I just love dragging Lonan. So it's funny how Reeve doesn't mind spending time with her brother so long as it's the bird version of him. That is such a roast. It's so funny. And honestly, I wouldn't really change much. It's hard not to talk about, things I might change. Not because like I want to, but because it's easier to describe why I like it if I sort of tell you why I don't feel like I need to change something right away. Like, for example, metallic bustling of New York for the silence of Oklahoma. This should say the metallic bustle of New York for the silence of Oklahoma. Now, these are kind of like a big, broad, like bustle of New York silent. I mean, like the whole state isn't going to be like that, So like, in a revision, I might go in and like be a little more specific, or I might not. I might just leave it at that because this is not really an important thing to emphasize. I don't know. Also, what's funny is her reaction to seeing Humilitas's eyes, because this bird actually has human eyes, because how do I explain this for the people who don't know my lore? This bird has her brother's eyes. So just imagine human eyes in a bird. It's kind of terrifying, right? So she's not used to it, even though she feels like she should because they're her brother's eyes. Anyways, I love that little moment of exposition. We already know that, but it's sort of a little reminder here for readers, aka me, because this ain't going out to anybody else but me. So that's this excerpt. I think this one moves quite quickly. I picked it on purpose because it's like one of those like sort of transitional moments, I think, in genre fiction that we don't get to like see the first draft of all that often because they're not moments that we emphasize. So next one I think is a little bit romancy. Oh, and it has typos, which is why I picked it, because this, as you can see, there's typos. So this is Harrison's point of view again, and he's thinking about his ex-boyfriend who broke up with him before leaving him for dead. I'm just making Lonan look terrible in this video. That's not exactly what happened, but it's okay. We'll just slander him on the channel. So here's that excerpt. Harrison is spinning in a bad waltz, splitting a glass of wine with a man he sees heaven in. He's watching in awe, typo 1, as he tastes grapes at the grocery store, nimbly slotting samples from the bags like he's not taking anything but giving. He's on his back listening to him hum a Catholic hymn he once loved in childhood. He's watching him through his apartment window sprint to his unit with a bouquet of zinnias just in case. He's kissing his mouth and therefore all of him, unwilling for this to end. Harrison struggles to inhale, his hands rattling as the memories consume him, and Callahan leans closer, asks if he's okay, but he's in a hardware store watching Lonan crouch to a little boy who stops to ask if he's a prince, to which Lonan says he is, from a kingdom far, far away. He's on the phone with his mother, watching Lonan fill out a page of Sudoku. He's in the car, both their hair whipping like flags, and he's wondering what he did to end up here, what he did to deserve this man, or deserve this man in my case. I love this excerpt. I mean, okay, moving between flashback and fictive present like a pro. Okay. If it's not clear, we are sort of experiencing the fictive past here, but like in the present tense. I love doing that. Writing flashbacks in the present tense is fun. He's spinning in a bad wall, splitting a glass of wine. That's not actually what's happening right now. This is the fictive present. He struggles to inhale. So I think that was cool to see. So he's spending time with Callahan, who asked him a question that sort of bothered him and sent him into this, I don't know, spiral. Callahan is obviously in the scene. He's like, "Are you fine? I'm not trying to make you upset on purpose, but you have no idea until, the next book, because I'm low-key actually, secretly evil." But yeah, I mean, there's the makings of something really, really great here, and I think it already reads quite nicely. Like, the details are crazy for first draft, like bad waltz, glass of wine, the grapes. I love that. I mean, we obviously know these are the typos, like we need to change them, but like, I don't care. So Control Z. But I love this image of like a man he sees heaven in, and then also like a man he's watching in awe because Lonan's like tasting grapes at the grocery store, but it doesn't look like he's taking something, but giving. What is he to say? That is, ooh, that's good. I love this, him listening to him hum a Catholic hymn he once loved in childhood. Like, what a specific thing to remember about the man you love, you know? Like, I guess you really are in love because that's how you know his favorite Catholic hymn. Anyways, you know, Lonan sprinting with a bouquet of zinnias. That's cute. That's really cute, right? The Lonan talking to the kid who's like, "Are you a prince?" And he's like, "Yes, actually." That's cute. That's playful. Lonan playing Sudoku, which is like a joke that I make about him. But yeah, he really is a Sudoku guy. And then the last sentence is just so cute. What he did to deserve this man. Deserve this man. So I think this is a really good example of like excerpts that are really going to shine with just a tiny polish, to be honest. Like, you just get rid of the typos, polish up the sentences, just a teeny tiny bit. There we go. Perfect. It's great. My prose and like my details really, I think, shine in flashbacks. So that's why I wanted to include this, because it's like, oh, this is a different sort of perspective on my writing process. It's a flashback. So typically the details are a little bit more specific. They're kind of bright. In revisions, I might, you know, I would clarify things. The pronouns, I mean, gosh, that's one of the hardest things about writing a couple that uses the same pronouns is that, you know, you kind of get lost. So I might go back in and clarify some things. So those were all 3 excerpts. So that was the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was so fun to sort of go through all these excerpts and also find the parts that I love in my own work, even in its earliest stages. You can love your writing at any point of your writing process. Don't make anybody make you think that you can't. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye.